Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Around 2015, my wife Sarah and I moved into a cozy 1,100 square feet condo with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. We snagged this place as second owners, paying $165,000, just a few grand above the original price. Our unit was on the 3rd floor, with every room decked out in wall-to-wall carpeting, except for a small 4x4 linoleum square inside the front door. This detail will become important later. The front door opened into a spacious living area with vaulted ceilings, the great room on the left, and the dining room and kitchen to the right. A long hallway led from the great room to the bedrooms. We got acquainted with some neighbors and hit it off with most of them. The couple directly below us, Mike and Jess, were university students, nice friendly folks. After they graduated, they rented out their condo to Jess's brother, Todd, and his college buddies. Todd was a decent guy, and we didn't have major issues except for one of his birthday bashes where the music, raucous laughter, and happy birthday chants kept us up till 4:30 a.m. The next morning, we blasted our tunes at 8 a.m. sharp, payback style. A couple of weeks later, we had a laugh about it and all was cool after that. Between 2017 and 2019, we renovated the kitchen and dining room, swapping out the carpets for ceramic tiles, including the area by the front door, to avoid constant carpet cleaning from spills and our toddler's high-chair food flinging. In 2020, our chill neighbors sold their place to a newly married couple in their late 20s/early 30s. Let's call them Brenda and Derek. Now, anyone who's lived between the 1st and 3rd floors knows the middle unit is the worst for noise. Kids playing, music. You're bound to hear some racket from above or below. I don't know what they were expecting when they moved in. I was blissfully unaware of the new owners until about a month later when I brought home a powered subwoofer for my home theater system, around 6 p.m. I proudly hooked it up and fired up an action flick with some epic explosions to test the immersive sound. After a few gunfire blasts and 2 big booms, the doorbell rang. Ding dong! I opened the door and there stood Brenda. Me. Hi there, how can I help you? Brenda, agitated. My husband and I are trying to have a quiet dinner. Could you please turn down whatever show you're watching? We can hear everything. Me. Oh, sure, my bad. She turned and walked away. I closed the door, turned down the subwoofer and main volume a notch, and thought nothing of it. Shortly after the next round of gunfire and explosions, the doorbell rang again, followed by rapid knocking. I paused the movie and opened the door to Brenda once more. Me. Hi again. What's up? Brenda. We can still hear everything from your show. Turn it down now. At this point, I was fed up with her attitude and decided to call her bluff. Me. You say you can hear everything. Can you give me some of the last dialogue? Brenda. I don't know. I just know you're watching some show. She was way off. Me. Actually, I'm watching movie title, and here are the last 3 lines of dialogue. I recited them verbatim. Me. Doesn't seem like you can hear my movie as well as you claim. Brenda. Face flushed, eyes blazing. I don't care, it's too loud, turn it down. Me. Well, the noise ordinance says I don't have to until 10 p.m. Brenda, huffing. Fine. I guess my husband and I will have to go out for dinner to get some peace and quiet. Me, cheerfully waving. Have a nice night. I cranked the subwoofer back up a tad and enjoyed the rest of my movie at a comfortable volume. The neighbors did end up going out that evening. At our next homeowners association meeting, Brenda stood up and ranted at length about the noise. How she could hear kids jumping on the carpeted floor. We had a 4-year-old. Crying. We had a newborn. Us walking down the hallway. Our music, movies, TV shows, you name it. She even complained about the Hispanic neighbors on the 1st floor blasting music on Saturday mornings, preventing her from sleeping in, and their loud arguments where she could hear every word. This went on for 6 months. Every single time the homeowners association told her, if it's between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., there's nothing we can do. If it's after 10 p.m. or before 8 a.m., you can call the police. They'd then send out a letter reminding everyone about being considerate and listing the noise ordinance. I stopped attending the homeowners association meetings after the 3rd month of Brenda's broken record routine. Twice, she even taped the notices to my door. I also learned they were members of our church and were supposed to visit us monthly. They never did. Cue the payback. Around the 6-month mark of Brenda's constant complaints and harassment, including a couple of visits from apologetic cops after 11 p.m., they heard nothing outside our door, we decided to renovate our floors. We knew this would infuriate our entitled neighbor, but we didn't care. We were done with her nonsense. We planned to extend the entry tiles all the way down the hallway to the master bedroom door and retile the bathrooms. For the great room, we chose a light coffee-colored bamboo hardwood, so ... demolition first. As I was prying off the last baseboard trim and pulling nails from the subfloor around noon on a Saturday, wouldn't you know it, bang, bang, bang on the front door. Me, yes, Brenda? Can you keep it down? I'm having a pampered chef party. Me, sure. I promptly finished removing the nails, then proceeded to bang my hammer all over the subfloor like I was driving in a million new nails for the next hour. I also cranked up the local hard rock station for the next 4 hours. FYI, the first floor neighbors were already blasting some kick-ass mariachi tunes, their Saturday and Sunday cleaning soundtrack. Next, we rented a hardwood floor nailer that, in addition to the compressor noise, would loudly drive nails into the flooring and subfloor while needing to be struck with a massive dead blow hammer. Bang! 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 It took us 2 to 3 days to install the bamboo hardwood in the great room, surely driving Brenda out of her mind. We then put in an awesome tile inlay down the hall, tiled from the front door to the master bedroom door along the great room wall, and retiled the dining room, kitchen, and both bathrooms. After nailing down the baseboards, more nail gun fun, and caulking, our new floors looked amazing. The bonus? Every time a hard shoe, like my daughter's favorite Sunday clompers she wore everywhere, or high heel, my wife took up doing everything in 4, 6-inch stilettos during this time, struck the floor, the impact echoed gloriously through our perfect new floors. All this renovating was partly due to Brenda's endless whining. It was also prep for selling our condo, as we'd outgrown it by then. We listed it and sold within a month for $250,000, at the absolute peak of the real estate boom, right before the market crashed. During closing, the buyer's agent told us the floors absolutely sold the place. We later learned from neighbors that within 9 months of our moving out, the second-floor nightmare neighbors sold their condo for $30,000 less than we did, taking an $8,000 loss, and sent a complaint letter to the Homeowners Association, stating their unit was unlivable due to noise from our incredible floors. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived on my family's land for as long as I can remember. My grandparents built a house here over 50 years ago, and the property has been passed down through the generations ever since. We're lucky to have 20 acres of beautiful countryside, complete with a long winding driveway that leads up to the house. The best part is it's all private property. We don't share the driveway or road with any neighbors. My family has always relished the peace and privacy. Sure, we have an homeowners association in our community, but they don't control anything on our personal property. Or at least that's what we thought until the new homeowners association board members came in. These guys were on a major power trip. They started implementing all kinds of crazy new rules and regulations, trying to control things like paint colors, fence styles, holiday decorations. You name it, they wanted their hands in it. I tried to avoid them as much as possible until the day I discovered a few homeowners association vehicles driving up and down our private road. At first I couldn't believe my eyes. Who did these people think they were, patrolling a private road that had nothing to do with them? I waited till they had driven by, then hopped in my truck and raced after them. I caught up to them near the bottom of the hill. One of the homeowners association board members was even standing outside his car, staring intensely at the edge of the road like he was inspecting it. I pulled up alongside them and stepped out of my truck. "Excuse me, but this is private property. What makes you think you have the right to drive up and down here?" The main homeowners association guy, whose name I later learned was John, turned and gave me an obnoxious smile. "We have every right to be here. All the roads in this development fall under homeowners association jurisdiction, including this one." I shook my head in disbelief. "I'm sorry, but you're mistaken. This is a private road on private property owned solely by my family. It does not belong to the homeowners association." John shrugged. "Doesn't matter. We oversee all roads in the community, public or private. It's our responsibility to patrol here and assess any issues." Now I was really seeing red. The audacity of this guy to stand here and boldly claim my family's private property fell under his jurisdiction. I got right up in his face and told him, "Listen up! This is not community property. This is my family's private land that we pay taxes on. You have zero rights here. I'm only going to ask you nicely one time. Take your vehicles and get the hell off our road." John's smug expression wavered slightly, but he stood his ground. "Sir, there's no need for threats or foul language. I'm simply trying to do my duty and inspect this road that falls under homeowners association oversight. If you have records proving this is private, we'll need to review them." That was the last straw. I wanted to sock this arrogant jerk right in the face. but I restrained myself and simply took out my phone. The only thing I'm going to show you is me calling the sheriff to report trespassers on my property. Now leave before this gets uglier. I dialed cop and made sure John could hear me requesting police assistance to remove trespassers who refused to vacate private property. That must have finally shaken him up. He ordered the other homeowners association board members back into their vehicles, shouting that they would continue the inspection another day. I stayed right on their tails as they drove back down the winding road and past the gate onto the public street. A few minutes later, 2 police cruisers arrived. I met them at the front gate and explained the situation, how these deluded homeowners association board members had taken it upon themselves to trespass and unlawfully patrol a private road. The sheriff was familiar with John and the homeowners association's antics. He paid them a visit, and although they denied any wrongdoing, the sheriff made it crystal clear that they had zero rights on my family's property and could face charges if they trespassed again. I hoped that would be the end of it. But a week later, I awoke to find a makeshift barricade and orange cones blocking access to the start of our driveway. There was even a homemade sign declaring it closed for homeowners association repairs. Unbelievable. These people just couldn't take a hint. This time, I immediately alerted the sheriff's office. Within 20 minutes, a pair of deputies arrived and I led them to the barricade. The female officer shook her head in disbelief. "This is absolutely unacceptable harassment. Please wait here. We will go speak with whoever is responsible for this." It didn't take them long to visit the Homeowners Association president's home just down the street. He feigned ignorance and blamed everything on John, who he said was simply an overzealous volunteer. Yeah, right. The sheriff's deputies made one thing clear. If this continued, arrests would be made. That finally got through to them. The barricade disappeared and they stayed off our road after that. But the Homeowners Association still made our lives difficult, fining us for alleged violations every chance they got. I finally had enough and decided to hit back where it hurt, their wallets. I knew California state law allowed homeowners to collect up to $1,000 for each violation of Homeowners Association rules that infringed upon their legal rights, so I sent them official notice demanding $1,000 for each incident where they harassed us and attempted to illegally exert jurisdiction over our property against our consent. It ended up being a nice amount. 5 violations for the road incidents, 3 for fining us unfairly, plus the emotional distress their actions had caused my elderly father who couldn't handle the constant harassment. My total demand was $16,000, which I promised to pursue in court if they didn't pay up. The Homeowners Association blustered and threatened countersuits, but eventually their lawyer told them they were clearly in the wrong. They realized if it went to court, they would likely owe me even more money, so they reluctantly cut me a check for the full $16,000, along with a written apology and a promise to never encroach on our property again. It was a major victory, and taught them they couldn't walk all over people's rights, no matter how self-important they behaved. My family and I could finally breathe easy again and focus on enjoying our beautiful private property in peace. The Homeowners Association still pulls crazy stunts in the community, but they've learned their lesson. My family's land is off limits for their schemes. The next one is a petty revenge story. About a year out from divorce, ex-wife has been acting petty and childish to say the least. Tries to make me look bad any attempt she gets. My young son played t-ball last year and I volunteered to be the coach. Really enjoyed it, but my work responsibilities schedule changed before this season and I simply could not commit to do it again. I became good friends with the guy running the league and let him know before the signups even started as a heads up. Was disappointed, but not much to do. What I was able to do was volunteer to get to the field super early Saturday before the game started to set them up. Chalk line the batter's boxes, foul lines, put out bases, etc. 3 fields total, which he was extremely grateful for. A few weeks before the season was supposed to start, they were unfortunately short a couple coaches and were sending out some desperation emails to all of the parents. My ex knew my situation and apparently thought going onto the website and basically fraudulently volunteering me to coach would be a great way to inconvenience me, make me look bad by having to back out, etc. So she did just that. Buddy running the league called me, very confused. In order to register, you have to make a username password. Username is just your email, so after a few minutes of looking through the registration, we worked what happened as her email was in the account name. Ultimately, he decided to put his kid on my son's team and be the coach on top of everything else he was doing. He was pissed at my ex himself, though, because this stunt could have set them back finding a legit coach if they needed to, possibly delaying the league. Here's where I come up with the petty revenge. He sends out the official email out to all of the parents of the league with the rosters and coaches for all 10 teams. Except for our kids' team, instead of listing himself, I tell him to list my ex, puts her name, contact info, etc., and says to expect further info from each coach individually. She emails him back once she notices to point out the mistake, saying it should have been me instead, but he ignores it. He sends her all of the clearances coaches need to pass, asks for times she can come pick up equipment, the whole 9 yards. After a couple of days, parents of the team apparently start emailing her asking for info on when the season starts and when practice will be and all that. Eventually, he does reply back, playing dumb, telling her she is the one who volunteered, as it was her username that registered, and knew it wasn't supposed to be me as he had spoken to me months earlier and knew I wasn't able to do it this year. Put her in an awkward spot, because she either had to admit what she did, or feign some BS ignorance and claim a miscommunication which everyone knew was nonsense as we were divorced. After she flat out says she can't coach and she isn't sure what to tell him, he sends out another email to the entire league, which says due to the coach of our kids' team name backing out at the very last minute, I have no choice but to take on coaching the team myself, on top of the rest of the responsibilities. Moving forward, we ask that coaches do not volunteer unless they plan on fulfilling that commitment. He didn't mention her by name, but everyone saw the rosters and knew he was talking about her. She texted me a few weeks later once the season started about how my buddy is an a-hole for doing that to her due to a glitch in the registration software, as multiple people have approached and asked her not so nicely what happened, and she knows she is getting looks from people during the games. What a satisfying text it was to receive. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Quite a while ago, both my mom and my grandmother worked for one of the local casinos. At the time, the casino had a 90-day trial and then you would get insurance. During the course of them working there during the 90-day trial, the casino switched their policy to 18-month trial before getting insurance. So they then proceeded to find reasons to fire all of their employees who are coming up on the 90-day so that they would not be grandfathered in. My mom knew this was coming because she saw a person after a person who had gone hired a little bit before her get fired for ridiculous reasons. So when she got called in the office the day after she had to go to the hospital for a severe allergic reaction, she knew what was coming. They marked it as a no-call, no-show because she started having a severe allergic reaction on shift and her EpiPen didn't work. She walks into the office. She's informed that due to her no-call, no-show, she is being let go effective immediately. She asked for her final check. They informed her that she would receive the check after she turned in her uniform. My mother proceeded to strip down to her underwear and bra, drop the uniform on the supervisor's desk, and demand her last check. She stood there, in her underwear, for 40 minutes while they tried to convince her to turn the uniform in at a later day. Nope. You said I'd get my check when I turned in my uniform. There is my uniform. I want my check. Eventually, they wrote out a check. She then walked out, taking the long route through the casino, saying her goodbye to all the staff and regulars on her way out. So, a couple days later, when my grandma had her shift, she knew what to expect, because she was coming up on that same time frame. And my grandma proceeded to do the exact same thing. My grandma walked through the crowded casino in her underwear. The next one is an entitled people story. My dad runs a local tourist group in my town, and on the weekends I usually help out if I'm not doing anything. My job is mainly to interact with customers and answer questions and explain the local rules and just generally make sure they don't do anything stupid that will upset the locals. I quite like talking to the people while we're traveling to a destination. So anyway, last weekend I went with my dad to help. We stopped at the hostel to pick up our group, and I was helping the people on the bus, and this lady and her family stepped forward, and I greeted them, and the lady said, "We are from the States." The way she announced it, it was like she expected me to clap or get excited, but I just said that's cool and asked her to please get on. She seemed offended but didn't say anything, and when everyone was seated, we left. This lady proceeded to brag loudly about America and why it's better than my country, and keep looking at me whenever she made a comment. She was making everyone uncomfortable. I just decided to ignore her and speak to the others. One of her kids apologized for her obnoxious behavior when she was distracted at a site we were at. It's terrible when a kid has to apologize for a grown adult horrible behavior. The rest of the day went good with her occasionally saying something about America, but she went quite towards the end. I guess she realized I really didn't care. Or maybe it's because the others in the group, including her own family and fellow Americans, were avoiding her and looked embarrassed to be with her. But yeah, that's my entitled story. Side note, not hating on American tourists, most are quite respectful. Loud, but respectful. The next one is an entitled parent's story. First, let me say I am honored that I have this much power in my coworker's life. I had no idea, and apparently I am using this power for evil instead of good. Story time. Coworker is extremely behind on bills because her college-age daughter uses her credit card and she racked up thousands in food-related charges in under one semester, over $5,000. Coworker still gave her the card the next semester because she couldn't have the daughter walk to the dining hall and have food she didn't like, but was the food she already paid for, and didn't want to cook in the kitchen even though she paid for a weekly grocery delivery from the grocery store. But you know I'm not a parent, so maybe I don't understand. Anyways, Coworker is looking to save money. I grab coffee daily from the lunchroom. Basically, it's hot water that I add my own stuff to, coffee and creamer. Well, herein lies the problem. Coworker keeps forgetting to buy the coffee she needs. I'm not sharing my expensive coffee with her. I draw the line. By forget, I mean she runs to the grocery store almost daily because needs cereal the day they run out of the one they like instead of eating the other one in the house. Again, not a mother, so maybe this is normal. But if I tried that with my mother, I would not have eaten cereal. So instead of Amazoning like a normal human being, she needs to grab Dunkin' every morning. Now, to the part where I am costing her money. We have free coffee downstairs and free cream, but again, it's downstairs. This coworker walks by it every morning when she does remember to bring coffee. She forgets to grab the cream and messages me saying she's too tired and doesn't know what she's going to do. The thing is, I have cream at my desk. My cream is not the same as downstairs. You see, guys, I buy my cream in flavors in the single serve variety, in larger quantities because I'm horrible at remembering to buy it, so I stock up. Theoretically, I have extra. The guilting texts came daily for weeks, but never outright asking. I always say, hey, just grab some downstairs. She told me that because she doesn't have cream, she now just stops at Dunkin' every morning. So because I won't share my $50 worth of cream, she's now telling me she goes to Dunkin', which she can't afford. I can see where the daughter gets it from. I figured you guys needed a laugh. The next one is an entitled people story.
It started with the neighbor from hell, the psychotic dog-napping witch I will call Sue. For the purpose of the story, it's not her real name. To give some much-needed context here, my family and I had already lived in that HOA-controlled neighborhood for around 7 years at this point. And during that time, we never had any disputes or issues with any of our neighbors. That was until 1 year ago, we decided to adopt a dog from a local shelter, a decision one particular neighbor would never forgive us for. Despite our attempts to ignore or reconcile with them, things went from bad to worse to the unthinkable, and my heart breaks for anyone who has gone through a similar nightmare as we have. So anyway, after a rather eventful Christmas with the in-laws, we returned to the comfort of our house for a quiet week before our return to the daily grind of eat, work, sleep. However, my partner had one last surprise for me when a very fluffy puppy greeted me at the front door. She explained that she knew I had wanted a dog since I was little, but my parents never let me, so she was happy to oblige despite her allergies. The first few months with Paws was the hardest, as any new parent may tell you, between the training and the adjustment to new surroundings. Luckily though, we all seemed to be getting along. Our neighbors seemed less ecstatic at the new arrival, nervously peeking out between their blinds when we walked by, hoping he did not choose their yard for his business. One neighbor in particular took a particular dislike to our dog, a neighbor we will call Sue. When Sue first saw us with the dog, she walked over to us and struck up an initially friendly conversation. She must have assumed we were new in the neighborhood, as she was asking what we thought of the HOA and its rules. After explaining how long we had been here, her mood turned quite serious and dark. Without ignorance to fall back on, we had no excuse to own a dog, according to her. She walked off after that, and we were left confused, not seeing such an odd rule before in the contract that we signed. We looked again but found no mention, so we left it at that and hoped she would not bring up the issue again. Well, the following morning my partner returned from walking the dog and told me she had a weird interaction with Sue when, after spotting the dog, she bolted towards them in the park and began shouting. Obviously, as this would now be a repeated occurrence, I brought it up with an HOA rep and asked them to look into the matter, which they graciously accepted. A few days later, I get a phone call to say that the neighbor won't be making any more trouble and it was all a misunderstanding. Later that same day, a knock at the door followed by shouts from a very disgruntled Sue, very pissed off that we had called on her. Not wishing to escalate the situation, we ignored the door until she gave up and stormed off, not after her usual demands though of removing the dog and no dogs in this HOA. The next morning we both had to go out and run errands, something we had to leave our dog at home for, but we felt safe and assured that we would be back soon anyway. No big deal, right? Well, 2 hours later we are driving down our street and notice a squad car parked on the sidewalk by our house. Pulling into the driveway, we noticed the gate to our backyard busted off its hinges and a few curious neighbors had gathered nearby. The officer got out of his car to say that he had been called out to investigate criminal damage tipped off by a neighbor, but when he got there he noticed something more. Following him around the back, we found shards of glass scattered over the patio from a broken door pane that was left ajar. He immediately darted inside, remembering what we had left inside. The officer followed us in as we called desperately in search for our dog, but to no luck. 2 hours later, another police officer arrived with forensics to take evidence and witness statements while we sat in shock. In our brief absence, our home was invaded and our world was taken from us. With little else they could do, the police departed and we were left to pick up the pieces, distributing missing posters on every billboard and telephone pole within a 5-mile radius. All our neighbors helped us in a plight, all except for one. When Sue heard the news, rather than sympathy or sadness, she displayed a smug smile. Like someone might make when they had finally gotten rid of their home of rats or weeds, a pest had been taken care of. At mentioning her odd behavior to other neighbors, they confessed that they too had known others with similar history to her, all ending in the same way as our experience had. This was all too strange to be a coincidence, and so in our despair, we attributed our dilemma to the only person it could be, which was Sue. In the end, we did the only thing that made sense, which was visiting our attorney to draft a lawsuit to smack her with. We did not care at this point, we just needed our dog back at any cost. While I would have loved nothing more than to kick in her door myself and take matters into my own hands, I knew that doing so would only give her grounds to put me in jail instead. So through gritted teeth, I patiently endured. 2 painfully long days later, Sue was handed the notice from our attorney directly, with the short but clear message of return the pets or go to jail. A message we saw her promptly ignore and shred into pieces, but luckily for us, that helped us as well. With an anonymous tip sent to the police, they pulled her van over to find a bunch of suspicious animal cages in the back and a very shaky alibi for our break-in. They then investigated further at her house with a warrant and were quickly able to piece it all together, arresting her on the spot and hauling her off to the nearest station. After her arrest, her attorney approached us for a plea deal, but we had no interest in second chances, ignoring her request like she did ours. Following a very short trial, she ended up in jail on the charges of harassment, animal abuse, and break-in. And by the way, guys, I had to censor some other stuff there because that would identify the personal private information of OP, which I don't really want. Anyway, the judge generously said they would reduce her sentence if she recovered all the pets she had stolen and sold online, which she did not manage, sadly. I did, however, get back my dog, so while it was not a happy ending for everyone, Sue was punished and we were able to move on. And yeah, dear subscribers, I gotta say, it makes sense that HOAs, or at least some of them, are against dogs, because dogs are usually very good at spotting bad people. From my experience, a dog can kind of sense when he is confronted with a bad person, so maybe that's why these HOA maniacs don't like dogs. Anyway, the next one is titled, They Stole My Parking Space. I work in a place with a deeded garage parking, had one sweet old lady, I will call her Granny, who owned a Mini Cooper. Another couple who rented a unit did not have a parking spot and took to planting their economy car in her spot. When Granny complained, the renters would just say they were entitled because there were so many empty parking places so Granny could park somewhere else. And by the way, what the heck do they not get about deeded parking? This continued until the day the sweet old lady decided to be not so sweet. She pulled her car in front of the 2 renters' cars and parked bumper to bumper. Put a note on their car saying, "Parking in this space is $150 a day. Please leave a check with the concierge." So the 2 grifters renters showed up at my desk complaining about their car being blocked off and actually expected me to tow the Granny's car off. I had to re-explain that deeded parking meant that I could not tow a car from Granny's spot anymore, then I could rearrange furniture in her apartment. It is her land, she owns it, and you abandoned your car on her property. Talk to Granny. So after 20 minutes or so of the grifters renters complaining, I called Granny even though it was early in the morning. She came down to the desk in her house coat and slippers with her dog in tow. They begged her to move her car. Granny told them it would be $150, leave the check with the concierge. They kept complaining. Then she told them it would be an extra $50 for waking her up in the morning because they claimed an emergency. Then they asked her how long before she left the garage, and Granny told them, "Dearies, I'm retired. I will leave my spot when I am ready, and the price just went up to $150 a day plus $50 for waking me, and that will be in cash. Leave the envelope with the concierge. I'm walking my dog and I will move my car when I have your rental fee in hand." So not only did the renters not park in her spot, but word got around and I didn't have to deal with that issue for another 2 years. And then the next one is titled, "Never Photograph My Kids." I almost forgot about this, and it's a thing of marvelous beauty. So a few years ago I was living in an apartment complex near Charleston, SC. My downstairs neighbor was a nurse and had her 2 kids living with her as well as her girlfriend. She was going through a nasty divorce with her ex-husband. The ex-husband did not like her having a girlfriend around his and her kids, so he hired a private investigator to take pictures of the couple together. The ex-husband was apparently gonna argue family values or something in family court. Well, my neighbor was telling me about this and how it made her uncomfortable. That the guy just camps out in the parking lot waiting for her and her girlfriend to come and go. She had confronted him and he said he could be there if he wanted. Well, 2 things. The complex was considered private property and not a public area. The complex playground was right across the street from our unit building. Her kids played there pretty much every day after school, pro-revenge incoming. I jokingly pointed out how this guy was basically a stranger taking pictures of her kids at the playground, and then I had an idea. I called the police non-emergency number. I told the dispatcher that there was a strange man/car who did not live in the complex taking pictures of the kids in the playground. Within minutes, 3 cop cars pulled up to the private investigator's car, as well as the officer who lived in the complex. He, by the way, gets a discount on rent for being available for complex issues. The guy was told to get out of his car, patted down, and his camera was taken by the police. The guy was trespassed. Told to leave the complex and then never come back. I imagine he got his camera back later, but what sweet, sweet revenge that was. And by the way, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to subscribe to the Readers channel for daily awesome videos. And by the way, if you are from my channel, Ripe, then I have to say I won't read every single day here, but I will read every once in a while. It's actually a project made by my girlfriend, and she hires various voice actors to read these stories for you. Anyway, the next one is titled, "The Hotel Nightmare." Whenever a really expensive car pulled up, I would roll my eyes and steel myself because yeah, we were not a rat hole, but we were not a 5-star hotel either. It was an old building, it had a fresh coat of paint and new mattresses, but it had old building issues which almost always turned into complaints from people whose car cost more than I made in a year. The well-dressed man who exited his sleek black purring sports car made it in right before the 11 p.m. door lock, and it was taking me a moment to pull up his super elite blah 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 reservation because he had just made it in the car before walking in. He looked at the business cards on the counter and picked one up, a sneer forming on his lips as he read the name of our owner. He shall be RR for Rich Racist. Rich Racist? Oh, you are owned by Indians? Horrible lot of people, aren't they? Always dirty and letting things run to crap. I suppose in a comparison to the condition they grew up in, the worst crap hole, here's a paradise, yeah? Me, mouth open, gaping in horror, trying to process what I just heard. Excuse me? RR, I mean it's true, isn't it? Everything is always sticky and smells in these Indian-run hotels. I'll be surprised if I don't find bugs. I normally would not even stay here, but the next hotel is over an hour away. Me, sir. Long pause as my hands and voice were starting to shake. You won't be staying here. Please leave the property right now. Rich Racist? What? You cannot do that. I got a reservation and I'm an Elite Jerk member. Me, I've cancelled your reservation. Elite Jerk means you won't be charged a fee. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Get off my hotel now, douchebag. RR, I want to speak to your manager. Call him right now. After 10 p.m, I am the manager. I could call my owner, the Indian, and tell him what you said. Would you like that instead? To tell him what you think of him and ask him to do you a favor? I could see this sinking into his face, but then it snapped back into entitled rage. Rich douchebag, I'm gonna call the hotel customer service. They will hear about this. Me, oh yes, they will. I'm gonna call them right now myself, right after you get off my property, or I'm going to call the police first. I pick up the cordless phone with rage tears brimming in my eyes. I hate that I cry when I'm angry. Get out! As if it was some kind of magic spell. And it worked. He left in a huff and squealing tires, and I called our rewards program to preempt his incoming complaint. Then I texted the owner with just, got some stuff to talk to you about when you wake up, nothing important. I was jittery and shaking from adrenaline for a while. This was one of my moments that I'm really proud of myself for doing the right thing. A counterbalance story for me beating myself up in my other post. And yes, I had my own little nitpicky issues with the boss, but they were not wide-sweeping generalizations about all his people. I'd worked at his different properties for years, I considered him a friend, his wife would give me a bindi and bless me once a year during their big religious holidays, and I would take off my shoes while she blessed the office and chanted with bells even though I'm Christian. They brought me back a gift from India. Aunt and uncle would bring me spices to try on my pizza. They were tiny and sweet, and I used Google Translate to thank them. No one gets to drag them like that to my face. Guess he thought I would just nod and go along with it, and well, guess what? Customer is not always right. I never got in any trouble for this. And yeah, ripe stars, that is exactly how you should deal with an awful, entitled, racist hotel guest, because indeed, if the customer is a douchebag, then the customer is certainly not always the king.
The next one is an entitled people story.
I work as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. Essentially, it's helping people with disabilities find funds or accommodations for work, school, training, transport, etc. While introverted, I generally like working with people, and when I've had enough and need to recharge my social battery, I can shut the door and the office is quiet, despite the walls being paper thin. Here comes, we'll call her Barb, who is loud. A yell talker. She's also smothering, kind of condescending, talks loudly to herself constantly, and just generally rubs me the wrong way. Whatever, she's harmless, right? I keep a glass dish full of candy on my desk that is for any clients, coworkers, custodial staff, whoever. I am not reimbursed for this, I just like being nice. Plus, it allows me to be friendly without having to be very social. It makes a crappy day better when I see a coworker stop by for a piece of chocolate or a lifesaver and cheer themselves up. Most people take a few, I don't care, but Barb completely and absolutely abused it. She regularly picks out all the red lifesavers for herself, as well as the Dove milk chocolates. And I mean all. She would take upwards of 10 pieces a day every time she's here. Only 2 to 3 times a week, thankfully, of each. Now it's too far, because it ducks everyone else over, including my clients. I started leaving some on her desk specifically for her to try to alleviate the problem. It kind of did, for a little bit, until a couple of weeks ago when I had to go home sick with a migraine around noon. I came back the next day and found my candy dish absolutely ravaged, and every single red lifesaver in Dove Square had been taken, leaving behind mostly other flavors and some Hershey Kisses. That idiot. I did the math and realized she had eaten about $9 worth of my candy in a matter of 3 weeks, and never offered to repay or refill it. She also sucks on them very loudly and smacks her mouth almost violently. So, I decided on the days she's in, suddenly the dish is only filled with everything but the red lifesavers and Dove. She's been rifting through the dish since, disappointed. I put them back out when she's gone. I think my coworkers have already noticed, since now they seem to stop by more on those days too. Super petty, but I don't care. Selfish a-holes don't get enabled to screw over everybody else. Not if I can help it. The next story is titled, Got Revenge on an Abuser. One Friday night, I went to a party. I talked about a girl I met on the beach while I was walking my dog. One girl was very drunk and said, "Is she fat?" She doesn't usually fat shame people, but I invited her to softball and she was making a stupid joke. To which I said, "No, she's chubby, but cute. I like chubby girls." A guy, Dick, overheard me and thought I called his girlfriend fat. I don't know how such a big miscommunication could happen, but it did. I didn't know this, and 2 days later, Sunday, we had a softball game. I didn't play, but while walking out, Dick ran up to me, said my name, and swung at the side of my head, and I went flying. Just for perspective, I'm 5'9", 115 pounds. Dick worked out, was 6 foot or over, and probably double my weight. My glasses broke, my tooth was chipped, etc. I was scared and didn't know what reason he would punch me over, as I never had interactions with him. I ran away, called the cops later. They are dragging their feet, saying they can't find him, but I want the money for my damages. It has been 6 months. I even had an eyewitness go to the station and make a statement. I asked Dick for the money, and I said I don't want anything fancy, just my glasses replaced. Dick said he'd give me an apology, but no money. Even though he did it in front of 15 people, so he's not denying he punched me, he's telling other people still that I called his girlfriend fat. He was not part of that conversation, but 5 people who were all say I didn't call his girlfriend fat or even talk about her, so that's only his opinion. So basically, only he, of all the people there, thinks I called his girlfriend fat. He also admits to hitting me, although he's told people it was open hand, even though many witnesses claim otherwise. He still won't pay for the damages he caused. So, cue revenge time. I live in a US territory. This territory is not a fan of mainlanders coming in and acting like they own the place. 6 months after the altercation, he started posting pro-mainlander stuff and is trying to be the face of why mainlanders are good for the territory. Also, insulting a local journalist. So, I knew there was a very strong movement against this, and after putting up his videos for a week, he got tons of hateful comments. So I messaged some of these people and gave them the police reports, chat logs, etc., and now he basically has an army of locals who hate outsiders trying to expose him. He also doesn't seem to be afraid. He has everything on his Facebook profile public. I had a hunch and messaged his ex. She said he was abusive, so I have a lot of dirt to expose him with. Except, I'm just passing the information along to the people who want to do it. The next story is titled, Peeping Lady Neighbor Gets Flashed. So, many moons ago, I moved into an apartment, 2nd floor. At the time, I was about 21, and I'm a guy. Nice place and decent part of town. Not long after I moved in, I noticed one of my 2nd floor neighbors kept trying to investigate my living room, through, around, any way possible past my curtains. I need to tell the layout of the apartment before I go any further. From front to back, I had a sunroom, fully inside the house, but windows everywhere in this room that gets a lot of light, and faces the street and neighbors across the street, church, and church parking lot where we all parked for street cleaning. Past the sunroom was the living room. From there, into the kitchen, then to the hallway which leads to the bathroom and both bedrooms, master bedroom being the last room in the back that also leads to a porch for our apartment. So, back to the story. I would always be nice to anyone and would chat here and there with most of the neighbor ladies, which were all nice. All except for one. She thought she was the queen of the street and had to know what everyone was doing at any time. She would constantly try to look through my windows to see what was going on in my apartment. She was about 65 years old or so. I would always see her craning her neck and head around to see into my apartment. I would try to ask her to stop, but she would never answer her door. Finally, after about 6 months of this, I decided to give her something to look at. So, one morning, I got a shower, put on a robe, and went out to the sunroom. I always had the curtains closed at night, and if I was undressed. I looked around the street and everywhere I could see to make sure no one was out and looking, but mainly wanted to make sure she was trying to investigate my house. There she was, craning her neck, trying to look through my closed curtains. Me, still having my robe around me, opened the curtains, saw her again, trying to investigate my apartment, opened my robe in full view in the middle of that window. I thought she had a heart attack since her face contorted and she grabbed her chest, lol. Of course, her being a Karen called the cops to try to get me arrested. Well, the cops show up at her place, then come over to mine. I had gotten dressed by this time, so went downstairs to open the door and talk to them since I already knew what it was about. Cop 1. Yeah, we got a report of you standing naked in front of your window? Me. Yeah, wanna know why? I'll tell ya. Ever since I moved into my apartment, that old hag has been damn near breaking her neck to try to investigate my apartment every day. Me and my roommate have tried to ask her to stop, but she never answers her door. I finally got tired of her being a peeping Tom and gave her something to look at. And before you say anything, no one else was around when I did it. It's not my fault her 65-year-old ass can't handle seeing what I have. Cop 1 and 2 laughing their asses off. Cop 1 trying to catch his breath. Okay. I'll go talk to her and tell her that she can be arrested for peeping and making a false report. Do you want to press charges? Me. Nah, I think she learned her lesson. But if she didn't, she'll get it again. But next time, it'll be a little more than she is going to bargain for. Cop 1 and 2. Laugh again. Just make sure no one's around you if you must do that again. They left, walked across the street, and about 10 minutes later they left, still laughing. She never tried to investigate my house again. Yes, this happened, and yes, I did that. I have nothing to hide and don't really care. If you want to break your neck to investigate my house like you think you can, then don't be surprised at what you see, and don't complain about what you see when I finally get tired of that and I flash you stark-ass naked.
The next story is titled, Evil Ex Tried to Outrun Bills. A little over 30 years back, I was just out of an abusive relationship. I was 20, he was a decade older, and he was a human leech. He lived off me, and occasionally my parents, for a year. When I finally told him to go away, he broke into my apartment, threw me into a wall, and tried to take my cat. He was truly vile. Shortly after I was shed of him, I took a job as a receptionist with a bill collector agency. This was when computers were first beginning to be used. I was told there were boxes of bills in the back that hadn't been entered as they had gone into collection before the computers were installed. They weren't so old as to be uncollectible, but they weren't the priority. Knowing what a deadbeat he was, I used a lunch hour one day to look. Sure enough, he had more than $10,000 total in bills from a dozen different businesses. So I entered them all into the computer with his current contact information, including the jobs he was working where he was being paid under the table. I assigned it to the agency's most aggressive collector. He even let me listen in on the first call he made to the guy. It was immensely satisfying. And even better was a few months later when the ex left town to go live with his sister. The next story is titled, 2 Short Stories of My Family's Revenge. My grandfather was a World War II veteran and a high school chemistry teacher. He had another teacher ask to borrow $500 back in the 70s. Later, when the payment was past due and the guy seemed like he was ghosting him, my grandfather showed up at the school with a cherry picker and pulled that dude's engine out. He came out to start his car, popped his hood, and was horrified to find his engine gone. My grandfather said, "When you pay me back, you'll get your engine back." And he did. I had a great uncle that was a penny pincher and was the type of man to store his cash in the walls. He went to a Cadillac dealership to buy a car and walked around for nearly an hour without being waited on by a single salesman. He then walked across the street to a Buick dealership and a salesman ran up to him and greeted him. My uncle then said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to buy 2 Buicks cash today, but you've got to run across the street and let them know how they lost out on a sale." This kinda reminds me of the scene in Pretty Woman. Moral of the story, hardworking men don't always dress nice. The next story is titled, Sure, you can redeem your lottery ticket in 5s. This is possibly the tiniest petty revenge ever. I work at the East Coast's favorite goose-themed convenience store, and I was helping on the register. A middle-aged man goes to hand me his lottery voucher, and as I went to take the ticket from him, he snatched it back and quite aggressively said, "I want this in 5s. "Sure, you'll get your $50 in 5s, no problem." So I scan his ticket and then proceeded to count out $50 in 5s from the register as slowly as I could. Usually when counting out a lottery cash out for somebody, I count it once again in front of the customer so we both know that I'm giving them the right amount. And that's exactly what I did. Slower than the first. Duck you and your 5s. I hope this brings a smile to all my fellow cashiers. The next story is titled, I'm Not Proud. I had this younger guy I fell absolutely in love with. We never met in person, which should have been my first clue because we lived in the same town. He acted like he was into me, and that he wanted to meet. We had been talking for months. And during those months, we would talk dirty on the phone. I would send him nudes and videos daily, because I foolishly thought he cared about me like I did him. Well, one day I go to talk to him and I'm blocked. I also learn he has a girlfriend, who he had been seeing while I was sending stuff. So essentially, I was being used for free porn. I was devastated. I decided if he wanted nudes, he'll get more nudes. So I posted his snap on every single gay subreddit I could find. I would talk to these guys, getting them all turned on, then send his snap. I guess he started getting dozens, then hundreds of dick pics and loads of cumshot videos. He unblocked me just to yell at me because it had to be me. I denied it and blocked him, and continued to share his snap for days until I got over it. The only thing I feel bad for is the gay men who got catfished and led on.
The last story is titled, Rotten Meat Deserved a Lipstick. Lately, I recalled other stories from a recently deceased family member. As she can't tell it to anyone anymore, I thought I would share it. 3 kids who are still alive don't matter in this story, so I mention only the ones who matter. No dialogue, I wasn't born back then, and Auntie didn't recall any to tell me. She was a young mom then, and told me this as an old granny. During the 1960s, this lady, let's call her Auntie, had 4 kids and a husband. They were buying fast food from a stall in town, as kids were hungry and they still had a long time before getting home. These stalls were like metal carriages, easily moved around with a car, and had a window for selling food items. The youngest kid, I recall then 4 years old, had trouble eating the hot snack, a grilled sausage. Others ate fast and noticed he had only taken 1 bite. Auntie asked him what's the matter, and the little kid said it tastes bad. Auntie tasted it, and the sausage was rotten. They turned around, having only walked a few feet away from the stall, but the metal window was closed. Auntie's husband started banging the closed window, yelling that his son got a rotten sausage. Not a peep from inside. Now, Auntie believed that the guy selling food did this on purpose, getting rid of the rotten meat products by giving them to children not old enough to tattle. Auntie wasn't one to value makeup, but as her husband sure was, she had a bright red lipstick in her handbag. So, after trying to get the guy to just grill a good sausage for the boy with no success, Auntie went petty, took her lipstick and wrote with huge letters, "This place sells rotten meat," right to the metal covering before they left. They weren't well off, so the little boy didn't get anything to eat before they got home, but Auntie was glad he didn't get ill from the 1 bite he took. The owner of the food stall painted the metal, but a greasy red lipstick text was still visible. All the people in this story have passed, so I'm comfortable telling their story after hearing it at least once a month for over 10 years.
The next one is an entitled people story.
For getting my fiance's family gifts that were too personal for Christmas when I'm new to them. I'm engaged to Noah, and this was the first Christmas I spent with his family. I met them in the summer after we moved to be near his family, now that he's finished with college. We're getting married in February, and we're expecting our first child together in May. Being someone who has no family and seeing how close his family was, I wanted to make sure I showed my appreciation for them with the gifts I gave, so I tried to get something each person would love. One of his sisters loves to read, and so I made a book sleeve for her with little details from all her favorite books. One of his nieces is on the spectrum and has wanted clothes for her stuffy, so I made some clothes for her to put on the stuffy. I bought his mom a jewelry box that she had admired a couple of times after she mentioned never having a real one. For his dad, I bought him a frame for his office big enough to hold photos of his whole family on, since he always complained he couldn't find one big enough or nice enough, and had no more room for individual frames. I included photos Noah had provided me in it. I got his older sister her favorite makeup, which he mentioned she couldn't afford to buy lately. Then I got his brother a signed piece of memorabilia from his favorite sports team. For the rest of the nieces and nephews, I bought wish list items the parents weren't getting. Noah thought they would love everything. He told me I didn't need to go through the effort I did. I spent weeks tracking everything down and searching for certain items. But he really thought they'd like them. But when Christmas Day happened, I could tell something was off. I spent the whole time worrying that I had bought them stuff they didn't like anymore or something. They said nothing, but then the next day they asked Noah what the hell I was thinking. And I was like some kind of stalker, buying them such personal stuff when I'm almost a stranger to them. The next day we saw them again, and I apologized for the gifts I gave them and told them I would be a lot more mindful in the future. I offered to make it up to them. One of his sisters called me a stalker to my face and told me it was no wonder my family didn't want me if I was so creepy to do stuff like that. Noah yelled at her. I apologized again and told them I didn't want to hurt anyone and I would learn from this. They told me I had overstepped. Noah said we were leaving and they owed me an apology. I feel so bad. Noah is supporting me and told me I did nothing wrong, but surely there wouldn't be so much offense if that were true. I need to ask, am I the a-hole? Comment said, this is really sad. You went above and beyond for the family of your fiancé, and you were met with distrust and mocking. not the a-hole. That's hard to get over. Glad your fiancé is standing by you. I distance myself from his family ASAP. Another comment said, not the a-hole. And if my son ever brings home someone so considerate and sweet, I will make sure he knows she's the best woman he can ever hope for. And he better treat her like the angel she is. I can't get behind people who don't want nice gifts. I would be happy to be seen in my interest and or needs. Not your fault. Also, Noah sticking up for you is great. He knows why he loves you, for sure. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not waking my husband up and causing him to miss his flight to attend Christmas with his family? My husband Al is the only son in his family. He's spoiled as duck by his mom and his 3 sisters. The way I see it, they treat him like royals, call him hair, gift him expensive stuff, prince-level treatment. I didn't have an issue with it at first since they consider it showing love and appreciation, but I used to get into a lot of arguments with his mom and sisters about not making efforts to treat him the way they treat him. Basically, they claim I'm not showing the same level of respect they show him, and because of that, I got disinvited from lots of events, including Christmas. Al's stance is to stay out of it, and when I complained about his family disinviting me from Christmas, he said he could not force them to have guests they didn't want. On the morning of his flight, he slept in and didn't wake up on time. He woke up freaking out and yelling about me being petty and not waking him up before his flight after he asked me to. The reason I didn't wake him up was because I myself was asleep too. Why would I wake up early just to wake him up? His phone was away, since he hates sleeping near electronics. He left in a rush and tried to get on another flight, but failed due to airports being packed. As a result, he missed the Christmas celebration with family. His mom and sisters are pissed, claiming I did this to get back at them and to isolate him from them. Al thinks I acted petty and vicious when I could have woken him up to be with his family. He's still mad and is claiming that I ruined the holidays for him. Comment said, this is not about your husband sleeping late. You're not a human alarm clock for a guy in his mid-30s. This is about your husband allowing his family to exclude you. He's treating you terribly. Why are you putting up with it? He gets 2 business cards, one for a marriage counselor and one for a divorce lawyer. He can pick who he'd like you to call, not the a-hole. Another comment said, not the a-hole. He's not a prince, and you're not his servant. If he refuses to sleep near electronics, then he should make alternative arrangements for an alarm, like a rooster. He should be on your side in disputes with his family, not cowardly staying out of it. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole? Suing my neighbor after she sprayed weedicide on my lawn. So I caught my neighbor spraying weedicide on my lawn in my fenced-in backyard because she said she was sick of all the weeds and thought she was doing me a solid. I like dandelions. They are good for the bees, and I have pet rabbits, dogs, cats, and a tortoise I like to roam the yard, and all of them eat or at least nibble and lick the grass, so it's literally poisoning my pets. So anyway, I kick her the duck out and take all my pets inside. Now 2 of my rabbits are dead, and another is in critical condition. I'll never be able to let my pets outside again to eat the grass because weedicide takes forever to go away, because it can sit in the soil for who knows how long, and I'm worried that the dogs and cats might end up having a reaction too. Since they also nibble the grass, call me overprotective or overcautious, IDC, I love my animals. So I'm suing her for damage to my property because it's now unusable for my animals, veterinary bills, and emotional damage due to the deaths of 2 of my rabbits. I'm also trying to get the cops to pursue a case of animal abuse, or at minimum criminal damage, because she did basically poison my animals. But I doubt anything will come from it because I have to prove ill intent. But they are pursuing her for criminal trespass. She's a Karen. I think she deserves it for thinking she had the right to be on my property at all, and especially because it's killed my pets, and now I don't know what to do about my lawn, because I'm not risking another animal's life by letting them out, at least unsupervised, for at least a year. However, my parents and my girlfriend think I'm being unnecessarily cruel because it was an accident and she thought she was just being a good neighbor, and that I'm making it a bigger deal than it is, and should just ask her to pay the vet bills. Just for your information, she has asked me about the weeds before. I don't remember it verbatim, but basically the conversation was along the lines of her, "Hey, I see you've got a lot of dandelions. Weeds, have you noticed that too?" Me, "Yep. I enjoy the look of natural lawn." Her, "Something about my new car." Since she has a kid that always asks about coming over to play with the rabbits, I assumed she knew they ate them. If she was looking over my fence that often, she'd notice the dandelions were only ever flowering in a quarter of the lawn at the time, because my rabbits got cycled in a way that most of the lawn was mostly weed-free, while the part they couldn't get to that week would be sprouting. Update to the story. Thanks for the messages, guys. I'm taking the advice and getting a security camera and a padlock for the fence. Also, in fact, I'm getting a necropsy done. Also, I talked to her, told her that the rabbits died after the fact and there was staining on their pen. She said it's weedicide, not pesticide. They were probably just sick. My rabbits were actually outside when she did this, and there was a stain on their pen. I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure they got a direct spray. Update 2. I got a call from my vet on Monday morning. The necropsy is back. My rabbits died from corrosion to several internal organs and had corrosive burns lining their mouth and nose. My third rabbit also came home today and only has minor injuries to his throat and a small injury resulting in superficial hair loss and mild irritation on his nose. He'll be on pain meds, and just in case I have critical care ready for those without rabbits, when rabbits are in pain and sometimes in mourning, they sometimes refuse to eat, so critical care is basically a mix powder that you can syringe feed to keep their digestive system functioning, because GI stasis can be life-threatening. Also, I've contacted a lawyer to move forward with a lawsuit, but they haven't responded, probably won't until later today, because I contacted them yesterday through email. The vet thinks the stuff the neighbor used wasn't a commercial herbicide because of those chemical burns, as well as because it killed my crabapple tree and the bit near my fence and pool are bare. Comment said, "Not the a-hole." My neighbor did this last year and got reported to the HOA because the yard she sprayed, under the cover of darkness, she knew it was wrong, belongs to a family with very young children. I'm sorry about your rabbits, and you need to know that it's not your fault, and you are a good owner. Another comment said, "Not the a-hole. She should have asked you first and talked to you about it." Losing pets is bad rough. Knowing someone directly caused their death is worse. She also trespassed on your property. By a long shot, not the a-hole. You need to add trespassing and gather all the proof you can. Not to mention vet bills are expensive as F. I hope you can sue her. The last story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my sister-in-law that no one in our family is named Stephanie? I can't figure it out if I did anything wrong, or if so, what, because I have no idea what's going on. Hopefully someone here can give me a clue." Here's the relevant information. As far as I know, my brother and his wife are expecting their first girl after 2 boys. I love Ricky and Jace, and so does my sister-in-law, but she has always wanted a girl and is very excited to be having one. She also wants to name the girl Chloe, as she loves that name. My brother hates the name Chloe and really wants to name their daughter Stephanie. They have been arguing about it for a few weeks since finding out the gender. I got to my parents' house late last night, and my sister-in-law was the only person still awake. We talked for a little bit, and she asked me the weirdest question. She asked me if I knew any stories about great-aunt Stephanie. I was so confused. I literally said, "Who?" Sister-in-law clarified that she was talking about our grandmother's older sister that died when Grandma was a little girl. Our grandma had 2 sisters, but their names were Judy and Lynn. There's no one in our family named Stephanie, as far as I know. I told as much to my sister-in-law. She changed the subject after that, and we soon went to bed. This morning, my brother and his wife were both sulking during breakfast. Even the kids could tell. Ricky kept saying, "Stop being grumpy on Christmas." So it wasn't just my imagination. I got my brother alone and confronted him. He snapped at me for meddling and told me to stay out of his marriage. My brother is pissed at me, and my sister-in-law won't even talk to me. I'm afraid to say anything to my parents and drag them into this, especially since I still don't know what this is all about. Either my grandmother had a secret sister that I don't know about, but my brother does for some reason, or my brother lied to his wife to convince her to name their baby Stephanie. Both options seem equally weird to me. Maybe there's a third possibility I'm not seeing. Reddit, am I the asshole? If so, please explain that to me why. I don't want to be the reason Christmas is ruined. Update, most awkward Christmas Eve dinner ever. Got to keep this short. Everyone now knows what my brother was doing with the kids' names. Except the kids, obviously. They are pissed. Weirdly, my mom is the most pissed. A Christmas truce is in place for the kids, so no fighting on the holiday. However, the baby is definitely going to be named Chloe. My brother very quickly backed down when my mom said a few choice words to him. The topic is completely banned for the rest of festivities. So for now, at least, they've tied a bow on the situation. Christmas morning update. Aside from some glaring over a couple of the boys' stocking stuffers, Robin Funko Pops, everything else went well with the gift opening, as well as being woken up at 5:30 a.m. by being jumped on by one's nephew can. I think my brother realizes he crossed a line and has been very attentive to his wife. He mentioned getting Chloe's name embroidered on some stuff when they get home. He even told Mom he would do a Christmas breakfast so she could have a break, and he gave me an "I'm sorry" grin when I opened his gift. I think everyone is going to be fine. Comment said, not the a-hole. It's very weird that your sister-in-law is not talking to you. It does sound like your brother was lying to try and get his preferred name, but you only answered a direct question that was asked of you. Does your brother generally treat your sister-in-law well, or does he seem to be the type that could be abusive? That would be a possible reason I see for the sister-in-law to stop talking to you over this. Another comment said, not the a-hole at all. She asked you about your non-existent great-aunt Stephanie, and you understandably said you had no great-aunt Stephanie. You just spoke facts. You didn't bring it up. You weren't meddling in their marriage. How were you to know it had anything to do with their marriage? Not your fault. Your brother lied to his wife and got found out. I get why the brother is mad at being found out, not at you, but no idea why your sister-in-law is mad. Don't sweat it. You didn't ruin Christmas. If anything, you should be mad at them for dragging you into their drama and spoiling yours.
The next one is an entitled People Story.
The first story is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to lie to my niece about why she is not allowed to come skiing with me? I have a brother, Hugo. When Hugo was 19, he got his then-girlfriend, Amy, pregnant. They had their daughter, Ashley, who's now 11, and later got married and had a baby boy, who's 4. Over the years, I've become close to Ashley. When I'm home, I live abroad. I take her out to shows, shopping, horse riding, etc. We also keep in contact via text. She's bright and thoughtful, just a pleasure to have around. Amy has never liked me, but has mostly put this aside for Ashley. Me and my boyfriend are visiting my family for Christmas and then leaving to go skiing. We arranged for Ashley to come skiing and stay with us for New Year's. Amy wasn't keen on this idea, but relented because Ashley was excited to learn how to ski, as all her school friends do. I took my boyfriend's hire car to pick Ashley up from school on Friday, and she was excited because it's a sports car, and I let her friends sit in it and take pictures. At dinner, she asked if I would drive her too and chaperone her and her friends going ice skating on Tuesday in town. Hugo said I probably didn't want to look after a bunch of kids, and Amy had already planned to chaperone. Ashley ignored him and begged me to chaperone. I really didn't mind, but Amy looked annoyed, so I said I wouldn't want to mess with the established plan. Ashley kept pushing and said she didn't want Amy to come because Amy dressed badly and was never fun and embarrassed her. Hugo told her to apologize, which she did, but she also kept insisting it was true. Amy got teary and Hugo kept telling Ashley she'd upset her mother, but this just made Ashley angrier and she dug her heels in. Because of this, she was told she was not allowed to go ice skating and is now not speaking to Amy. Yesterday, Amy and Hugo came to me and said they didn't want Ashley to come skiing anymore. Amy feels Ashley needs to spend more time with her family, and Hugo is supporting her. They asked if I would tell Ashley that me and my boyfriend had changed our plans and wouldn't be going on the trip anymore. I asked why, and they said if they told Ashley the truth, that she would blame Amy and that would defeat the point of her trying to build a bridge with Ashley. I said I understand that, but I didn't feel right lying to Ashley, and if her parents had made the decision, they need to deal with the consequences, not push it on to me. Amy said if I cared about Ashley, I would realize it's best for me to fall on my sword, rather than alienate her further from her mother. I said no again, but Hugo said we should all take until Wednesday to think about it. Ashley is still being very standoffish to her mother, and I know if she finds out her mother canceled the ski trip, it will get worse. So now I'm wondering if I should go along with Amy's plan. I just want what's best for Ashley. Am I the a-hole? Comment said, not the a-hole. Amy and Hugo need to confront Ashley about how she treats her mother, and they should not ask you to lie. Ashley not going on the ski trip should be presented for what it actually is, a punishment, not a means of bridge building.
The next one
Another
is an
comment
entitled
said,
people
not
story.
the a-hole.
The next one
and
is
not
an
only
entitled
will
people
Ashley
story.
prefer knowing the truth, but she will also feel as though she can trust you because you are refusing to lie to her. Also, Amy trying to guilt you into lying by pulling the "if you actually care about Ashley" rhetoric is such an a-hole move. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to give my sister any of my grandpa's inheritance? I was recently bestowed an inheritance of close to $50,000 by my late grandfather. The reason I received the inheritance according to the will is because I was the only person in his life who would make a point of visiting him at his old age home. His wife and friends were all long deceased, and my parents live in a different country than him. I would visit 1 to 2 times a month to check in on him, play cards, bring him on walks, etc. The main reason for these visits was because when I was at the lowest point in my life after getting home from deployment, my grandfather was always there to listen and talk with me. We were both combat veterans, so he understood me on a level other people couldn't. Here is where the problem lies. My grandfather held a lot of extreme viewpoints that I do not agree with, more specifically, against the LGBTQ plus community. I resented my grandpa for these views and called him out whenever he would say something inappropriate. I was very close to ending the visits because of these views, but decided against it for reasons discussed prior. My sister is happily married to a woman, and therefore obviously cut off contact with my grandfather. My sister and I have a very good relationship in general, but would frequently fight over my continued relationship with my grandpa. When he passed away and left me the money, I did not think there would be any argument over it, as my sister wanted nothing to do with him, understandably so. However, when she found out about it, she demanded that she should receive half of the money. I was shocked and basically told her no way, as she was not the one who had been visiting and providing care for him for the last 5 years. My sister was visibly angry, and we have not been on speaking terms since. This has left me wondering whether I am the a-hole, as my sister was a victim of my grandfather's bigotry. However, I don't think half the money is a reasonable request. I will accept whatever judgment I receive. Am I the a-hole? Comment said, not the a-hole. I understand why your sister broke ties with your grandfather, but she's being very hypocritical, wanting his money and entitled in demanding that you share your inheritance with her. As they say, where there's a will, there's a relative. Another comment said, on the other hand, it was your grandfather's decision, and you can honor it. On the other side, if you uphold his cutting off your sister, you are upholding the same bigotry he supported that drove her away. Self-respect says, that's inappropriate, as you say. Honestly, I would share at least a 5th quarter with her. It's not completely a-hole territory, but you will probably lose a relationship with your sister if you share nothing. Is that a consequence you're okay with? The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for going off on my ex's girlfriend, for taking my daughter out of state to visit her family, and saying I no longer want her around my daughter? I'm a 28-year-old female, have a 7-year-old daughter with my ex-husband Liam, who's 44. Liam has been dating a woman, Ellen, 33 years old, for 6 months. She has already moved in with him and has been trying to take on the role as the second mom. Not stepmom, second mom. She insists my daughter calls her mom when they are together, which my daughter is uncomfortable with. Ellen usually is the one who drops my daughter off as Liam works 2 jobs. I don't like that Ellen is the one that drops my daughter off, because if I need to speak to Liam about something pertaining to our daughter, then she always has to give her input. Medically, school, having extra time together on either side, etc. I've let both Ellen and Liam know that she doesn't have any input on what goes on with our daughter, but they both brushed it off. The issue happened last Friday when we were doing our switch-off, and I went to our spot we usually meet to pick up our daughter. I waited for about 4 hours, then called Liam asking where Ellen was and if she got lost. The conversation went like this: me, Liam, where's Ellen? I've been waiting for hours and she's still not here. Did she get lost? Liam, what do you mean? I thought she told you she wanted to extend our time together. Me, no, I never got a call or a text about that. Can you put our daughter on the phone? Liam, she's with Ellen, visiting family, in a completely different state. At this point, I lost it on him. 1, for not even being with our daughter, and 2, for not checking with me to make sure I knew about this. I told him to call her and tell her to bring her back. And from now on, Ellen is never allowed to be around my daughter. Liam said I was overreacting, and that would mean he would have to quit his second job. He is completely fine with just 1 job. His main job pays 6 figures. I told him too bad, and called Ellen telling her if she didn't bring my daughter back right now, that I would call the cops. She just said, fine, way to ruin the fun. And how she wanted my daughter to meet her family, because they are going to be my daughter's family soon. She apparently didn't even make it to her family's house, because 2 hours later she pulled into our meeting spot. I didn't say a word to her. Took my daughter and haven't spoken to Liam unless it's strictly about our daughter. I've asked my family about this, and the majority said that it was wrong to yell at Ellen, as she just wanted to bond with my daughter. And I should be glad she's not an evil person. Am I the a-hole? Comment said, not the a-hole. Go back to court and get it in writing that someone can't just take your daughter to another state without the parent. She also needs to stop telling your daughter to call her mom. If needed, take your daughter to a therapist to testify that it's detrimental to your daughter, especially if she doesn't want her to call her dad's girlfriend mom. They aren't even married. Another comment said no. He has only been dating her for 6 months. She should still be having limited contact with your daughter, and definitely not any kind of decision-making authority. Not the a-hole. As a father, your ex should never have let this get so out of control this quickly. Another comment said, not the a-hole. Depending on the custody agreement, neither you nor your ex could take your daughter out of state without express written permission of the other. Even if your ex has primary custody, I believe you have rights. What is not okay is a woman who is not part of any custody agreement taking a 7-year-old out of state without either parent. This was your agreed upon time to have your child, and this woman took her over state lines without your permission. That might qualify as kidnapping, and you should definitely talk to a lawyer, if not the police. You are not the crazy ex. You are this girl's mother. New chickie is way too comfortable. You are not the a-hole. The last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for saying I don't care if my half-siblings, because it's not my mom's job to mother them? My parents were married and had me and my brother. My dad had an affair with Kate, and Mom and him divorced. Ellie was the result of the affair, and Tommy was born when Dad married Kate. A year later, Kate died. My dad's family rallied around my half-siblings and tried to make up for the loss of their mother. My mom shared custody of me and my brother with my dad. He had asked her to include Ellie and Tommy in her life after Kate died, and even told my brother and I a few times that they would be coming to Mom's with us, and she'd be their mom now too. My mom never did take Ellie or Tommy into her home. I don't even think she's ever interacted with them. When I look back at moments where everyone was present, she was always one side with her family and Dad was another with his and my half-siblings. Ellie and Tommy, as they've gotten bigger, have expressed all the emotions you might when you don't have a mom, but you sometimes share a home with kids who do. They get jealous, sad, frustrated. They have asked for us to share Mom with them, and they have wanted to come along when they hear Mom is taking us on vacation. They have wanted us to all spend Christmas together. All kinds of stuff. They also have just Dad's side of the family, since none of Kate's want to be in their lives. But we have both sets of grandparents and aunts and uncles involved in our lives. A few times over the years, Dad or my grandma or uncle have asked me if I don't dislike that my mom wouldn't open her heart to kids who are part of my family. I always said no, because they are not her kids, and so it doesn't make sense to me that she would. My dad wanted to try and get my half-siblings' wish to come true for a Christmas where we're all together, which would include my brother and I and our mom. Mom said no. She did not engage with him beyond her no. Ellie and Dad then tried to get me to talk Mom around, and I said no. I told them I do not want to tell her around. Ellie got upset hearing that and left. Dad and my grandparents then cornered me later and asked me how I can say that when I know Ellie and Tommy feel left out and they crave mothering. I told them I don't care if they feel left out because it's not my mom's job to mother them, and I would never expect her to do it, and since one can't be fixed without the other thing happening, them feeling left out can't be fixed unless they feel like now they have a mom and my mom. Then I realize it's not going to happen. They told me my mom could and should have love for them as her children's siblings. I told them that Dad should have thought about that before he cheated on her and got another woman pregnant while he was still married to Mom. Am I the a-hole? Comment said, not the a-hole. I don't get why families act like this. Your mom has no responsibility to those kids whatsoever, and everything you have said about this situation is correct. Hold your ground, original poster. This is so unfair on you and your mom for the way they are treating you. I hope they stop soon, otherwise they are really going to damage your relationship with one another. Another comment said it's sad because it feels like Dad is trying to get back with Mom and is using the kids as a prop to do so, which made them have this obsession over having her as a mom, which clearly isn't going to happen. Don't get me wrong, any kid in this situation would miss that motherly love and would probably look for it in other people. But the level it's at, and especially the insistence for it to be this woman who's never interacted with them, just screams to me that they were manipulated to feel this way. Clearly, Dad doesn't care whose hearts to break to get whatever women he wants at the time. Not the a-hole. Another comment said, not the a-hole. Your mother has no responsibility around your siblings, and the tale your dad and his family invented of her becoming their mother figure is never happening. It's unfortunate that their mother died, but it doesn't change the fact. If your dad wants to give them a mother that much, he should be looking for a partner already. That's the only way it could happen. They should leave your mother alone. Your family includes both set of grandparents, mother and father and siblings. Their family included one set of grandparents, father and siblings, including you. Your siblings sure have it rough since their mother is gone and her family isn't involved. But had your dad insisted on the family that they actually have instead of forcing your mother in a role she's not interested in, they probably would have accepted the situation better. Life is unfair. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.